This is Cloona House. There's no big house quite like it anywhere in Ireland, because behind these four walls are a multitude of stories of linen barons, of a travel writer, of military intrigue, of a calamitous political decision which reverberated around the world, and even of a modern day ghost story. This is Cloona House, one of the last country houses in the West Belfast Dunmurry area. And as we'll see, it's a house with a rich and colourful history. Cloona House is now headquarters of the Colin Neighbourhood Partnership, but its history goes much further back to the early 19th century. The lands of Cloona were once owned by Lord Donegal, the greatest landowner in the Belfast area. But these passed in the 1860s to Nicholas Grimshaw Jr. Nicholas Grimshaw, of course, was the grandson of Nicholas Grimshaw from Lancashire, the father of Belfast's Industrial Revolution. It was Nicholas Sr. who had established the cotton industry in the city of Belfast. His grandson, Nicholas Jr., was also involved in the linen trade. And it was Nicholas who had this house built in 1869. It's a red brick, Italian-style house, almost certainly designed by Thomas Jackson, a premier Irish architect. The first occupant of Cloona, Nicholas Grimshaw Jr., lacked the business acumen of his grandfather. He was the director of the Ulster Spinning Company, but he frittered away his money and indeed Cloona House in drinking and gambling, having to move within 20 years of having built this house. He and his wife had 7 children, including 4 girls. The most famous was Beatrice Grimshaw. She was born here in 1870 and went on to become a world-famous travel writer, perhaps the first Irish travel writer, and indeed popular novelist. Her parents spared no expense in her education. She was educated privately at Cloona, then in France, and then at the then Queen's College, Belfast. She was a sports champion as well, winning the women's 24-hour cycle record. And indeed, she moved to Dublin in 1890 to become a sports journalist, writing about cycling. She then went to London, and then really she began her career on the world stage. She joined the Cunard shipping line and became a travel writer, traveling around the Pacific, the South Seas, and finally settling in Papua New Guinea, where she spent 30 years of her life. In that time, she would write 40 novels, all of which were bestsellers. They have tremendous names, really dealing with, I suppose, the white settlers of that region and their pursuit of love and money. You have Valletta of the Islands, published in 1907, which was about a fictional warrior queen in that region. And then, of course, her best work probably was When the Red Gods Call in 1911. This compares favourably with the works of her favourite novelist, Robert Louis Stevenson. Sadly, Beatrice Grimshaw, formerly of this house, died in Bathurst, New South Wales in 1953. She died penniless, and of course she had broken with her ancestors in a way, because as a young woman in her 30s she had converted to Catholicism. In 1888, Cloona was acquired by another linen magnate, Alfred Jaffe. He was the son of Daniel Jaffe, a German Jew who'd set up a thriving linen export business in Victorian Belfast. The Jaffe family are still remembered in the Jaffe Fountain in Belfast city centre. Sadly, as Germans during the First World War, the family came under criticism from local people and left Ireland forever. By the early 20th century, Cloona House was the home of William Ferrer, a retired Belfast businessman, and his wife Isabella. They had no children, but according to the 1911 census, they were living here with their 3 servants. Now, I'm on the servant staircase, which served, of course, all those great families, the Grimshaws, the Jaffes, and of course the Ferrars, right down to 1930. It was up these stairs the servants came, bearing pails of water, breakfast in the morning. Members of staff here at Colin Neighbourhood Partnership have reported ghostly happenings on these stairs, shadows at the window, a rustle of curtains, a zephyr of air, strange sounds. When they leave their offices, there's no one there. And one wonders, could these sounds be connected to those servants of the Edwardian years? I'm looking at their names from the old census form. There was Catherine Dunn from County Wexford, who was a cook to the Ferrer family. There was Isabella Kennedy from County Cavan, a domestic servant. And there was Martha Jane Love from County Fermanagh, another servant. Could that ghostly apparition, if it exists, be one of them? Or could it be the youthful form of Beatrice Grimshaw, the travel writer, the novelist, the athlete, reliving her youth in Cloona House, County Antrim, before her sort of privileged life on the high seas, in Australia, in New Guinea, writing those novels which captivated a generation. As we linger here in the grand drawing room of Cloona House, we can almost experience those great banquet evenings in the late Victorian period, hosted by its occupants, first the Grimshaw family, then the Jaffas, perhaps inviting the neighbouring gentry, the McCances of Suffolk, the Hamills of Trench House. We can almost hear the tinkle of the piano, the strains of the violin, the servants as they rush in and out with the different courses, perhaps dancing afterwards. In this, the doors parted, the great room, if you like, great rooms joined together. Because this was a grand Victorian house, and the people of the Colin area and the Polglass estate are lucky today that it's been preserved as a great cultural and indeed historic asset in the local community. It wasn't until the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939 that Cloona House was leased to the British Ministry of Defence to become the official residence of the General Officer Commanding Northern Ireland, the GOC, in charge of British forces during the Second World War. Houses were built for troops on the grounds, and there was a fleet of Daimler limousines for the use of the General and his staff. And of course, this was the beginning of a long association between Cloona House and the British Army. When the Troubles broke out in 1969, General Sir Ian Freeland became the GOC in charge of the troops who were then on the streets of Belfast and Derry. And by 1972, he had been replaced by Lieutenant General Erskine Crumb. Now, on that hangs a tale. General Crumb had a habit of smoking cigars. He arrived in February 1971, and he liked to spend a few moments each evening standing under the lamplit porch here at Cloona, lighting up his cigar. But one night in February 1971, a shot rang out from a sniper. Now, mercifully, the bullet missed the general, but he developed heart problems that night. He was removed to hospital, and he passed away from heart complications. So in many ways, he's a forgotten military victim of the troubles of that long period in our history. The sudden death of Erskine Crumb led to the promotion of one of the most political GOCs to be appointed here, General Sir Harry Tuzo. Tuzo arrived here in March 1972, really in the last year of Unionist rule from Stormont. One of his first decisions concerned the introduction of internment on the 9th of August 1971. The Unionist Prime Minister Brian Faulkner had gone to Downing Street to seek the approval of the British government for a major internment operation directed against the IRA, but one that would alienate the complete Catholic population from Stormont rule. You can imagine the conferences that must have been held here that sort of tense hot summer of 1971. You would have had the arrival on the helipad here of British ministers like Reginald Maudling, the Unionist Prime Minister Brian Faulkner fighting for his political life, police chiefs, military officers poring over maps and strategic plans. The operation for internment, known as Operation Demetrius, was planned here in the GOC's residence in Cloona House in July-August 1971. And of course, that was to worsen the conflict, to deepen the conflict, and to pave the way to Bloody Sunday in 1972, and the final abolition of the old Unionist regime. The early 1980s saw the development of the Pole Glass estate, built to provide much needed housing to the overspill from Catholic West Belfast. Suddenly, Cloona House, the GOC's residence, found itself really engulfed by a growing nationalist area. And in 1982, the decision was taken to abandon Cloona House, the GOC finding more commodious accommodation in Lisburn, in British military headquarters. It was decided initially to demolish the house because it was argued that if they left the house, it would be destroyed by the IRA, providing a great propaganda victory for that organisation. Things changed, however, when it became clear that the Catholic Church were interested in acquiring the house for a parish centre. And negotiations began between the British military, the Department of Defence, and indeed the Catholic Bishop of Down and Connor. The GOC wished the house to be passed on to the church as a free gift from the British Treasury. But Father Paddy McWilliams, the new parish priest of Pole Glass, said no. He wanted to be seen to pay £5,000 for Cloona House. The parish priest's reasoning, a government official noted, and I'm quoting from the official file, has more to do with matters in the local Catholic Republican community. In brief, the priest wishes to put it around that the church has had to put up a substantial sum of hard-earned cash to acquire the property, and that it's not a gift from the Brits, quoting the document. Otherwise, Father McWilliams insisted, Cloona would be quote-unquote earmarked as a legitimate target. The house was duly transferred to the church, which used it as a parish and community centre for a number of years, until 1999, when it was transferred finally as the headquarters of the Colin Neighbourhood Partnership, who still are here today. So there you have it, the history of a fascinating place. What does the future hold for Cloona? We'll have to wait and see. But certainly there's talk of refurbishing the house, restoring it to something like its glory, and preserving not only the history of Cloona and its many historic occupants, but also finding a way of showcasing the rich history of the Colin area.